Why do they fall silent when you enter the room? Why do their conversations halt mid-sentence, their laughter dies in their throats? Why do they study your face like they're searching for answers to questions they're afraid to ask? You walk in, they go quiet. You haven't said a word, but your silence screams. Listen to me, beloved. There's something stirring in the spiritual realm tonight, something ancient, something that's been calling your name since before you drew your first breath. And they feel it. Oh, they feel it burning around you like an invisible fire. They called you paranoid, intense, too quiet. But what they really meant was, you see too much. You sense what they're hiding. You know what they're thinking before they think it. You feel the shift in the atmosphere before the storm even forms on the horizon. You're not a mirror, dear one. You're an X-ray machine in a world of masks. For decades, you've carried this burden, this gift, wondering why you always know. Why you sense the betrayal before it happens. Why you feel the lie before it leaves their lips. Why your spirit rejects people before your mind understands why. They've made you question your sanity, doubt your discernment, second-guess the very gift that God planted in your soul. But tonight, that changes. Tonight, you remember who you are. The Lord spoke to Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Set apart, different, chosen. That's why the world doesn't understand you. That's why they whisper when you're not around. That's why your presence makes them uncomfortable. You carry something they can't explain, can't control, can't replicate. Divine discernment, spiritual sight, the ability to see beyond the veil that blinds the masses. And they know it. Oh, they know it. They don't know how you know, but you do, and you've always known. If you've ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift, felt the weight of unspoken secrets, felt the tension of hidden agendas, message is yours. Don't click away. Your spirit led you here for a reason. Thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and drop 77 in the comments. Claim what's been buried too long. Stay with me, because by the time we reach the end of this message, you'll understand why they've been watching you, why they've been whispering, and why God has been preparing you for such a time as this. The revelation begins now. How many times did they call you paranoid before the betrayal was exposed? How many times did they label you overthinking before the collapse you predicted came to pass? How many times did your silence carry more truth than all their loud proclamations combined? You've been living with a burden they'll never understand, the weight of seeing what's coming before it arrives. The exhaustion of watching people build their lives on foundations you can feel crumbling beneath their feet. The isolation of carrying wisdom that sounds like madness until time proves you right. Dear one, listen to my voice. You are not crazy. You never were. When Jesus walked into the temple and saw the corruption, he didn't need an investigation. He didn't need proof. He knew. My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. The religious leaders called him a troublemaker. Sound familiar? You've been watching lies take shape not to expose them, but to witness their collapse. While they built with bricks of deceit, you were standing there with blueprints of divine alignment, seeing every crooked corner, every unstable beam. You knew the structure wouldn't hold. But here's what broke your heart. They blamed you for pointing out the cracks. Still, water runs deep and yours is oceanic. When Elijah stood on Mount Carmel, 450 false prophets shouted and danced and cut themselves, crying out to gods that couldn't hear. But Elijah, he whispered one prayer that brought fire from heaven. That's your power, beloved. Not in the noise in the knowing, not in the performance in the presence. You've sat in meetings where everyone nodded along with plans you could feel were doomed. You've watched relationships everyone called perfect while sensing the rot underneath. You've seen through smiles that others called genuine, knowing the betrayal brewing behind those eyes. And when it all came crashing down exactly as you foresaw, did they thank you? Did they acknowledge your gift? Number. They acted surprised. They called it unfortunate. They pretended they never saw it coming. But you did. You always do. This is the cross you carry, chosen one. The burden of second sight in a world that's chosen to stay blind. The weight of truth in a generation that's drunk on lies. But here's what I need you to understand. Your silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your watchfulness isn't paranoia, it's prophecy. Your ability to see beyond the surface isn't a curse, it's a calling. The prophet Habakkuk cried out, "How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen?" But God answered, "Write down the revelation and make it plain, for the revelation awaits an appointed time." Your appointed time is now. Comment, "I've seen it too," if your silence ever felt louder than their lies. Because what you're about to discover will shatter every lie they told you about your gift and reveal the divine purpose behind your sight. You became the prophecy they hoped no one would fulfill. Listen carefully, dear one. There's something devastating happening in the spiritual realm right now. Something that's keeping them awake at 3 in the morning, staring at their ceiling, replaying every conversation they had with you. You didn't need to confront them. Your absence became the trial. Think about this. When Jesus walked away from the Pharisees, he didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply turned his back, and that silence shattered their world more than any words could. Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast of bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees. Your silence is their conviction. You knew the betrayal before they even decided to betray, didn't you? You felt it in your spirit weeks, maybe months before it happened. That sick feeling in your stomach when they smiled too wide. That check in your spirit when their words didn't match their energy. You saw the knife before they even picked it up. The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. Proverbs 14:15. You gave thought. You discerned. You knew. And now you're not just a person to them. You're a living echo of conviction. Every time they look in the mirror, they see your face. Every time they try to justify what they did, they hear your voice, no angry, not bitter, just knowing. They tried to write you off. Now you're the only paragraph that matters. Here's what's haunting them. You walked away without needing revenge. You didn't expose their secrets. You didn't drag their names through the mud. You simply left. And that grace, that terrifying Christ-like grace, is eating them alive from the inside out. If you've ever walked away without needing revenge, this part is yours. Because here's the truth, they can't escape. You became their conscience. When David fled from Saul, Saul couldn't sleep. Not because David was chasing him, but because David's righteousness exposed Saul's wickedness. Your very existence reminds them of who they chose not to be. They can't delete you from their memory. They can't block you from their conscience. You're written in permanent ink across their soul, and every time they close their eyes, there you are, not accusing, just present, a living reminder of the road not taken. You haunt them because you survived what they thought would destroy you. You haunt them because you chose forgiveness when they deserved judgment. You haunt them because you became everything they were too afraid to become. And here's the most terrifying part for them. You're not done rising. You're not done becoming. You're not done reflecting the light that burns away their darkness. But tell me this, chosen one, are you ready to step into the fullness of what's been haunting them? Because there's something even more powerful coming. The question that will change everything. What happens when the echo becomes the voice? You didn't ask to be chosen. You were born marked. While other babies entered this world with blank slates, you arrived with ancient software already installed. Your DNA didn't just carry bloodlines, it carried divine memory, generational wisdom, spiritual blueprints that most people spend their entire lives trying to access. And they knew it from day one. Listen to me carefully, dear one. When Jeremiah heard the voice of the Almighty saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart," that wasn't just poetry. That was divine programming. That was God encoding your spiritual DNA with frequencies that others can't hear, insights they can't grasp, warnings they can't receive. You've felt it your entire life, haven't you? That strange knowing, that eerie awareness, walking into rooms and immediately sensing who was lying, meeting people and instantly knowing their intentions, watching situations unfold exactly as your spirit warned you they would. They called it intuition, but intuition doesn't predict betrayals 3 months before they happen. Intuition doesn't make you physically sick around certain people. Intuition doesn't wake you up at 3 a.m. with warnings about loved ones in danger. What you carry is far deeper, far more dangerous to their comfort. You carry divine intelligence, and they treat your knowing like a threat because it exposes their fraud. Think about it. How many times have they accused you of being too sensitive when you called out their lies? How many times did they label you paranoid when you saw through their schemes? How many times did they make you feel crazy for knowing things you had no earthly reason to know? They weaponized your gift against you. They made you doubt the very thing that God placed inside you to protect you, guide you, warn you. But here's what they never understood. You weren't guessing. You weren't overreacting. You weren't imagining things. You were reading the spiritual atmosphere like a barometric pressure gauge reads an approaching storm. The prophet Daniel had this same gift. He read dreams, interpreted visions, saw through political deceptions. And what happened? The jealous officials tried to destroy him. They couldn't compete with divine revelation, so they attempted to eliminate the messenger. Sound familiar? Your knowing threatens their entire house of cards. When you speak truth, their lies crumble. When you sense deception, their masks slip. When you withdraw your energy from their drama, their whole performance collapses. That's why they've spent years trying to convince you that your gift is a curse, that your discernment is dysfunction, that your spiritual sight is mental illness. But tonight, we reclaim what they tried to steal. Type, "I was born for this," if this resonates in your bones. If you're tired of apologizing for the very thing that God hardwired into your spirit. Because what you're about to discover next will shatter every lie they told you about your calling. They said you were too quiet, too passive, too withdrawn. They painted your silence as weakness, your stillness as surrender. But dear one, they were terrified and they didn't even know why. Your calm wasn't passivity, it was divine precision. Listen carefully. When Jesus stood before Pilate, he didn't defend himself. When accusations flew like arrows, he remained silent. And that silence, it shook the very foundations of Rome. "Are you not going to answer?" Pilate demanded. "Don't you realize I have power to crucify you?" But Jesus knew something Pilate didn't. Real power doesn't need to prove itself. You are the eye of the storm, and storms move when you do. Think about this moment, right now. How many times have people told you to speak up, fight back, make some noise? How many times have they mistaken your stillness for fear? But here's what they couldn't see while they were screaming into the wind. You were reading it. While they were drowning in their own drama, you were standing on solid ground. Still waters run deep, and still waters drown the unready. You know what really terrifies them? It's not your silence, it's what your silence contains. They sense it. They feel the weight of your wisdom pressing against their shallow games. They see you watching, listening, processing, and it makes their skin crawl because they know you're seeing through every mask they've spent years perfecting. But here's the devastating truth they'll never admit. Your stillness exposes their chaos. Your peace reveals their panic. Your quiet confidence makes their loud insecurities echo like screams in an empty cathedral. "Be still and know that I am God," the psalmist wrote. Be still, not be loud, not be aggressive, not be demanding. Be still. Because in that stillness, you connect with something they can't reach, can't touch, can't understand. You've been carrying the presence of the Almighty in your bones, and they feel it every time you enter a room. That's why conversations stop. That's why they fumble their words. That's why they avoid your eyes. They're standing in the presence of someone who moves with heaven's backing, and their flesh knows it even when their minds don't. They underestimated you because you weren't loud. But chosen one, let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. Your enemies aren't the ones making noise. Your enemies are the ones watching your every move in absolute silence, studying you, trying to decode the mystery of your unshakable peace. If your stillness ever made people uneasy, hit that like button right now. Because what I'm about to reveal next will explain why they've been so desperate to break your silence, why they've pushed every button, pulled every trigger, trying to get you to react. They weren't trying to hurt you, beloved. They were trying to prove to themselves that you were just like them. But you're not. And that truth is about to change everything you thought you knew about your calling. Dear one, let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times have you walked into a space and felt the temperature drop? How many times have you entered a room and watched conversations stumble, laughter fade, eyes dart away like you carried lightning in your bones? They told you it was in your head. They said you were imagining things, but you felt it, didn't you? That electric shift, that sudden heaviness, the way the atmosphere bent around your presence like you were carrying the weight of heaven itself. You don't shift with rooms. Rooms shift with you. Listen to me, careful. You were never the problem. You were never too much, too intense, too heavy. What you were was truth walking into a den of lies. Light stepping into carefully constructed darkness. And darkness doesn't just dislike light, it recoils from it. The prophet Isaiah knew this burden. Woe to me, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Even the prophet felt the crushing weight of carrying divine sight among the spiritually blind. But here's what they don't want you to understand. You don't enter spaces, you reset them. Think about Jesus walking into the temple. Did he adjust to the corruption? Did he lower his voice to match their comfort level? The tables flew, the money scattered. The entire system rearranged itself around his presence because purity doesn't compromise, it transforms. You've been scapegoated for simply existing in truth. They've made you the villain for seeing through their masks. They've painted you as the disruptor when you were actually the revealer. And it's torn you apart, hasn't it? The loneliness of carrying clarity in a world addicted to delusion. But beloved, what if I told you that feeling that crushing weight of being misunderstood wasn't your curse? What if it was your calling card? What if every room that couldn't handle your presence was simply too small for your purpose? You're not atmospheric. You're architectural. You changed the blueprint. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his face shone so brightly the Israelites couldn't look at him. They made him wear a veil not because something was wrong with Moses, but because they couldn't handle the glory he carried. Sound familiar? They've been making you wear veils your whole life, dimming your light, muffling your voice, asking you to shrink so they could breathe. But tonight, that veil comes off. Have you ever seen energy change the moment you walk in? Comment, I've felt it because I need you to own this truth. You carry the presence of the Most High, and when heaven walks into hell, something's got to give. But here's where it gets dangerous for thee, man, powerful for you. You're starting to understand that your discomfort isn't dysfunction, it's discernment. And once a chosen one stops apologizing for their anointing, everything changes. Because you're about to discover the one thing they've been desperately trying to hide from you. They thought you couldn't hear them, but chosen ones always do. Behind those closed doors, in those hushed conversations, in those innocent warnings to others they told on themselves every single time, every whisper was a confession. Every caution was confirmation of what God planted in you from the beginning. Be careful around them, they'd say. There's something different about their energy. Different, that word again. The same word they used about Jesus when he walked among the Pharisees. This man speaks with authority, not like our teachers, they whispered in the shadows of the temple. Listen to me, beloved. You weren't a threat to their peace. You were a mirror. They hated what they saw reflected back. Your silence exposed their chaos. Your authenticity revealed their masks. Your discernment uncovered their deception. And instead of facing the truth about themselves, they chose to make you the problem. Watch out for their intuition, they'd warn. They see things that aren't there. But you did see, didn't you? You saw the betrayal forming months before it happened. You felt the lies brewing in conversations that sounded so sincere. You sensed the manipulation wrapped in their concern for your well-being. Jeremiah 1:12 declares, "You have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled." God confirmed it then. He's confirming it now. People didn't dislike you, dear one. They feared the silence that exposed their chaos. Your presence made them uncomfortable because truth has that effect on deception. Light always reveals what darkness tries to hide, and you, whether you knew it or not, carried the light of divine discernment. They warned others about your energy because your energy was clean, pure, untainted by the compromise they'd made with their conscience. You made them remember who they used to be before they learned to lie to themselves. Every time they said, "Something's off about them," they were really saying, "Something's off about us," and they can see it. Every time they claimed you were too intense, they were confessing their own spiritual dullness. Every time they called you paranoid, they were admitting their guilt. The very things they criticized you for were the very gifts God gave you to navigate a world full of wolves in sheep's clothing. If people warned others about you because of your energy, this one's for you. Those warnings weren't warnings, they were testimonies. Testimonies to the authenticity they'd lost and the discernment they'd never possessed. You see, chosen one, when God sets someone apart, he doesn't just give them a calling, he gives them the spiritual equipment to fulfill it. And part of that equipment is the ability to see through the facades that fool everyone else. But here's what they never understood. You weren't using your gift against them. You were simply being yourself. And being yourself was enough to expose everything false in their world. The question that should haunt them, and perhaps us, is this. If your very presence revealed their deception, what does that say about the life they've been living? They thought they were playing chess. You were playing 4D spiritual warfare, and you never even told them the game had started. Dear one, let me paint you a picture that's going to shake something loose in your spirit tonight. Picture this. You're sitting in that meeting, that family dinner, that church gathering. The whispers are flying, the glances are sharp, the energy is thick with deception. And there you are calm, composed, almost peaceful. They think you're clueless, but you're watching every card being played from every hand at the table. Here's what they never saw coming. While they were busy weaving their webs of manipulation, spreading their poison through text chains and coffee shop conversations, you were already 3 chapters ahead in the story. You felt the betrayal before they even planned it. You sensed the setup before they set the trap. You didn't flinch when the storm came, because you were the shelter. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 27-19, as water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. But you, chosen one, you became something far more powerful. You became the still water that revealed everyone's true reflection, and they panicked when they saw what stared back. You let them think you didn't know. You gave them rope and they tied it themselves. Can I tell you something that's going to change how you see every betrayal you've ever endured, every backstab, every whispered lie, every moment they thought they had you fooled? They weren't playing you. They were exposing themselves in your presence. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was strategic. Your stillness wasn't submission, it was sovereignty. While they exhausted themselves performing their deceptions, you conserved your energy. You watched. You learned. You documented every lie with the precision of a court reporter. Jesus did the same thing. When they brought him before Pilate, when they accused him, when they mocked him, he stayed silent. Not because he couldn't defend himself, but because he was already 10 steps ahead. He knew the ending before they finished writing the charges. Here's the question that's going to haunt your enemies. How did you know? How did you see through every facade? How did you stay so calm while their world crumbled around them? The answer terrifies them. You were never fighting their battle. You were operating from a higher dimension, where God had already shown you the victory. Comment, I watched it all, if you've ever played small just to stay safe, if you've ever let them think you were blind while you saw everything with perfect clarity. But here's where this gets dangerous for those who came against you. Because what they thought was your greatest weakness, your silence, your patience, your refusal to retaliate, was actually God positioning you for the greatest comeback they never saw coming. And that comeback? It's not coming tomorrow. It's happening right now. As they watch you rise, as they see doors opening that they tried to nail shut, as they witness favor flowing in your direction, they're finally understanding the terrifying truth. You weren't the victim of their story. You were the author of their judgment. They chase proof. You carry prophecy. Listen to me carefully, beloved. While the world scrambles for evidence, downloads data, and analyzes statistics until their eyes bleed, you've been operating on a completely different frequency. You don't need Google to tell you what's coming. You don't need the news to confirm what your spirit already whispered 3 months ago. Your intuition isn't a vibe, dear one. It's a broadcast from the throne room. Remember when Jesus told his disciples, "But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all truth." That wasn't just for the 12 men walking dusty roads 2,000 years ago. That was for you, right here, right now, in your living room at 2 a.m. when you suddenly know without knowing how you know that something's about to shift. They follow signals. You are the signal. Think about it. How many times have you felt that inexplicable urge to call someone, only to discover they desperately needed to hear your voice? How many times have you avoided a route, a person, a decision, and later found out you dodged disaster by inches? How many times have you spoken words that weren't even yours, watched them land with surgical precision in someone's wounded heart? That wasn't coincidence, chosen one. That was divine calibration. The prophet Samuel heard God's voice as a child, but even he had to learn to recognize it. "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." But you've been listening your whole life, even when they told you it was your imagination, even when they medicated your sensitivity, even when they called you crazy for knowing things you couldn't possibly know. But here's what's haunting them now, and they'll never admit it. They've watched you act on divine instinct before it made logical sense. They've seen you turn left when everyone said turn right, and somehow you ended up exactly where you needed to be. They've witnessed you speak truth that cut through lies like a sword through silk. Type, "I'm tuned in," if you've ever acted on divine instinct before it made sense. This is why they whisper about you in hushed tones. This is why they study your moves like they're trying to crack some ancient code. Because while they're playing checkers with their 5 senses, you're playing chess with the supernatural. While they're reading the room, you're reading the times and seasons. The difference between intuition and divine revelation? Intuition feels like a maybe. Divine revelation feels like thunder in your bones. But here's the question that will determine everything. Now that you understand what you carry, what you've always carried, what are you going to do with it? Because, beloved, the world is about to need what flows through you more than ever before. Beloved, we've reached the moment of reckoning. The final veil is lifting, and what you're about to understand will shake you to your core. Your truth, the truth they tried to bury, the truth they mocked, the truth they called delusionist, they're undoing. Every whisper behind your back, every sideways glance, every time they called you too intense or overly sensitive, they were confessing their own spiritual bankruptcy. Listen to the word. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1-5. You are that light, dear one, and darkness cannot stand in your presence. They're crumbling. Can you feel it? Can you sense the shift in the atmosphere around them? Their masks are slipping, their lies are catching up, their carefully constructed facades are collapsing like houses built on sand. But here's what's breaking their minds tonight. You didn't have to lift a finger, you didn't expose them, you didn't fight back. You simply existed. Your very presence, your unwavering truth, your refusal to dim your light, that's what's dismantling everything they built on deception. You are not crazy, you are calibrated. When David faced Goliath, the giant didn't fall because of the stone. He fell because God's anointed stood in divine authority. That giant represents everything that has stood against you, every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to make you question your calling. Feel this in your spirit. You're not being attacked. You're being revealed, and that terrifies everything fake in your sphere of influence. The enemy thought persecution would silence you. Instead, it purified you. He thought isolation would break you. Instead, it prepared you. He thought their rejection would destroy you. Instead, it redirected you toward your true purpose. Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Not might not prosper shall not. It's already decided in the heavenlies." You're not a ripple, precious one. You're the tide, and it's already turned. Your silence has been louder than their chaos. Your peace has been more powerful than their panic. Your truth has been more threatening than any weapon they could forge. And now your rising has just begun. Can you feel it stirring? That ancient call awakening in your bones, that divine assignment clicking into place. They spent years trying to convince you that you were too much, too deep, too aware. But God is saying, you were exactly enough for this moment. If this whole message is hitting you in the gut, don't scroll. Don't minimize this moment. Declare it right now. My rising has begun. We're not done. The next layer is coming. And if you thought this one shook the room, what's next will change the atmosphere completely. They're not talking because you're loud. They're talking because your silence is louder than their chaos. And that sound, that holy, unstoppable sound, is the sound of heaven backing its chosen ones. Your undoing was their setup, but your rising, that's God's checkmate. Are you ready for what comes next? My dear friends, as we close this sacred moment together, I want you to remember 3 eternal truths that will anchor your soul in the days ahead. First, your discernment is not a burden, it's a blessing. When others whisper about how much you know, how deeply you see, how clearly you perceive, they're witnessing the hand of God upon your life. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, equipped with spiritual sight for such a time as this. Second, your silence has never been weakness. It has been wisdom. Like Mary, who pondered these things in her heart, you have learned to treasure truth in the secret place where God speaks loudest. Your quiet strength has been your protection and your power. Third, you are part of a remnant, those called to see beyond the veil, to discern the times, to carry heaven's perspective in an earthly realm. You are not alone in this calling. Beloved, God is still working in your life. Every moment of isolation was preparation. Every season of misunderstanding was positioning. Every time they called you too much, God was saying you were exactly enough for His purposes. And there is a community here, thousands of hearts beating in unison with yours, understanding your journey because they walk the same sacred path. Let me ask you this. Now that you know you're not crazy, not alone, not mistaken about what you've seen and felt, what will you do with this divine confirmation? Would you bow your heads with me as we close in prayer? A prayer for the chosen. Heavenly Father, I place my hand upon each precious soul watching this message tonight. Lord, you see them, the ones who have been misunderstood, overlooked, and whispered about. You know their hearts, their struggles, their secret tears shed in lonely moments when they wondered if they were losing their minds. Father, breathe peace into their weary spirits. Heal the wounds left by those who couldn't understand their gift. Restore their confidence in the discernment you've placed within them. Let them feel your pleasure over their lives, not condemnation, but celebration. Open doors that no man can shut. Vindicate them in your perfect timing. Surround them with people who will honor their insight instead of mocking it. Give them boldness to walk in their calling without apology. Most of all, Lord, remind them daily that they are treasured, chosen, and deeply loved by you. When the world makes them feel like outsiders, let them remember they are insiders in your kingdom. When others whisper, let them hear your voice saying, "Well done, faithful servant." Cover them with your protection, guide their steps. Use their sensitivity as a weapon against darkness and a beacon for others still lost in confusion. In Jesus' precious name, amen. My friends, if this message has touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Comment below and tell us how God has been speaking to you. Your testimony might be exactly what another chosen one needs to hear tonight. Ask your questions, share your struggles. This community is here to pray with you, to stand with you, to remind you that you are seen, known, and valued. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. We're building something beautiful here, a place where the misunderstood can find understanding, where the discerning can find community, where the chosen can find confirmation. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey tonight. Your presence here was not accidental. God orchestrated this moment, and I'm honored to have been part of your awakening. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are chosen. Until we meet again, walk in the confidence of who you are. God bless you abundantly.